Last night, your soulmate was with a girl. She then asked you a question that you should be aware of. Your soulmate was spotted seated across from a girl last night, my dear child. She leaned forward and posed a question that completely altered the atmosphere before anyone could figure out what that meeting meant. It has nothing to do with their future. It has nothing to do with the past. It had to do with you. Your sweetheart didn't immediately respond, and the room became oddly silent. They just looked down, as if a single truthful statement were more important than 1,000 justifications. Why would someone who doesn't know you want to know? And why didn't your soulmate say your name right away? Avoid skipping. The reality of that silence is much more poignant than anyone could have predicted. Decisions that are just now starting to come to light have been subtly shaped by what transpired during that session. And every second that goes by helps you comprehend why your soulmate still feels your presence so strongly. The girl observed every facial expression, observing how your soulmate's eyes softened the moment your name was mentioned. She posed yet another surprising query. Would anything be different if this individual reappeared in your life today? Once more, there was no prompt response. Rather, your partner smiled weakly, unable to conceal years of unresolved emotions. More was disclosed by that one response than could be expressed in words. The talk abruptly lost its informal vibe. It turned into an exploration of the reality your love had been evading. There's a big thing waiting for you, so stay until the very end. You weren't the target of the girl's competition. She was attempting to comprehend why a person who professed to be progressing nevertheless harbored feelings that would not go away. However, your love was utterly stunned by what she eventually acknowledged. No one in the room was ready to respond to the larger question it posed. The girl asked one last question as the night grew quieter, and this time there was no way out. What is the one thing you've never had the courage to tell them? The air was heavier than it had been. For a little period, your sweetheart closed their eyes, seemingly reliving innumerable experiences that had never really vanished. The girl gently moved her chair back in shock as they murmured something so candid. It dawned on her that she had misinterpreted things from the start. This was never a tale of someone being replaced. It told the tale of a person who had never really let go. However, an unexpected message showed up on your soulmate's phone before they could fully explain the meaning of those words. The girl questioned in a hushed voice, "Does this have something to do with them?" As the screen lit up and their demeanor quickly altered. Your soulmate read the message and then made a decision that may change everything. However, the sender's identity was kept a secret, leaving one enduring mystery to be solved. Your sweetheart still held the phone. However, they took some time to unlock it. Rather, they gazed at the television as though they were debating whether or not this particular moment would ultimately alter everything. Your soulmate did not respond verbally when the girl queried, "Is it really them?" after noticing the abrupt change in their expression. The answer was found in the silence itself. Before they opened the message, they let out a long sigh. Neither of them anticipated what showed up. It wasn't an admission. It wasn't an apology. Even though it was a single, seemingly straightforward remark, its significance was strong enough to shatter any barriers your partner had put up around their heart. Avoid skipping. The girl felt she had just seen the start of something much more than a casual talk as the next few moments unveiled feelings that had been suppressed for far too long. Your partner stared out the window, utterly lost in contemplation, without uttering another word. The girl smiled softly because she had realized the truth, not because she obtained the answer she was looking for. She said, "You've been acting like you're over them, but your heart never moved." The impact. Slowly lowering their head, your love answered in a way that revealed more than anyone could have predicted. When the girl heard the response, a small smile appeared on her face. However, it wasn't a joyful smile. It was the grin of someone who had just cracked a case. She came to the realization that your love had not invited her to start a new chapter. Unknowingly, they had contributed to the closure of an old one that had never really ended. She stopped next to the table and gave one last bit of advice before heading off. You will lose the person who already means the world to you if you wait for the ideal opportunity. Long after she left, your partner kept thinking about those remarks. However, another notice came up on the phone as they were getting ready to go and grabbing their keys. It wasn't a message this time. It was a well-known name associated with something wholly unanticipated. And as soon as your sweetheart saw it, they muttered, "I never thought this day would actually come." A heartbeat after, everything seemed to vanish. With shaking hands, they opened the message, anticipating another typical update, but instead they discovered an invitation linked to your name. It wasn't overly dramatic. It wasn't really loud. However, it had enough significance to halt them in their tracks. The girl had just arrived at the parking lot. Moment your true love called out to you. They mutely acknowledged that you were correct. I continued to wait for life to decide for me. So, what are you going to do now? She asked, turning back with a knowing expression. The question hung in the air since, for the first time in a long time, there were no more justifications. Stay tuned for the next decision, which would indicate if fear prevailed over love or whether things were really going to change. Rather than hurrying on, your partner took an unexpected action. They took a seat again and went over what they had spoken that evening. Then, over all the other memories, one emerged. It wasn't a spectacular occasion or an ideal farewell. It was a little pledge that was associated with you but had never materialized. It dawned on them abruptly that the girl had not come into their lives to cause chaos. Unknowingly, she had turned into a mirror reflecting the reality they had been avoiding. She hadn't been inquiring to satiate her own interest. She had been keeping a close eye on everything, attempting to figure out why each response was connected to you. I've never seen anyone speak about another person the way you do, she had stated. Even when you're silent, your heart answers first. Your lover finally realized why they had been restless for so long after hearing those words more loudly than before. Your soulmate stared at those words for several long seconds, their fingers hovering over the screen, ready to make a decision that had been postponed far too many times. The girl sent one last message before vanishing into the night, just as they were getting up with a renewed sense of resolve. It contained only one question: what if they're waiting for one sign from you, too? Your soulmate's expression changed from regret to stunned disbelief as they realized they had misinterpreted one crucial truth about you all along. Suddenly, another alert appeared, this one directly connected to you, and revealed something they had never expected to learn, something that fundamentally altered the meaning of everything that had happened that night. Nothing could have prepared your soulmate for what they found out next. After reading the new information once and then again, they couldn't believe they had been misinterpreting you for so long. The assumption they had carried around, the one that had kept them apart, was based on silent miscommunications and incomplete pieces. The girl had been correct all along, the truth wasn't concealed because it didn't exist. For months, they thought your silence meant indifference, but now they realized it might have meant something completely different. They recalled moments they had dismissed, conversations they had ended too quickly, and subtle signs they never bothered to understand. It was concealed because they realized they had spent too much time listening to presumptions and too little time listening to their own hearts. The girl's questions had revealed something profound. She hadn't told your soulmate what to feel. For the first time, regret was no longer the strongest emotion, hope had subtly replaced it. One question: if fear disappeared today, who would be the first person you'd want to talk to, echoed louder than all the others. This time, your soulmate answered without hesitation. Only one name came to mind, and saying it aloud made everything feel suddenly real. She had just asked the right questions until the truth emerged on its own. As soon as your soulmate arrived home, they unlocked the phone once more, determined to send the message they had rewritten in their minds countless times before. Their fingers were resting above the keyboard, but before they could type the first word, the screen lit up again. Something enormous was waiting for you because the next step could no longer be put off. Their heart raced as they opened it, expecting one thing but discovering something entirely different. A quiet smile slowly appeared, followed by a look of pure astonishment. It wasn't another notification from the girl. It wasn't a reminder or a random alert. It was something directly related to you that arrived at the precise moment they had finally found the courage to act. The answer was finally within reach, but one unexpected detail remained hidden, and a quiet sense of certainty replaced the uncertainty your soulmate had carried for so long. Whatever happened next had the potential to erase months of uncertainty or create an entirely new mystery that neither of you saw coming. They were prepared for another challenge when they opened the new message, but instead they discovered something that briefly stopped their breathing. Your paths had come closer to intersecting than either of you had realized. There had been multiple opportunities, small, everyday moments where one conversation could have changed everything, but neither of you had realized the other was just a few steps away. The realization was nearly unbelievable. Your soulmate leaned back, closed their eyes, and whispered, "We were never as far apart as I thought." Suddenly, the girl's questions made perfect sense. She hadn't been searching for rumors, but rather for the truth concealed by miscommunication, fear, and timing. Stay tuned because the last pieces of this story are starting to come together in unexpected ways. Later that morning, the girl sent one last message, but she didn't ask any more questions. Instead, she just wrote, "I hope you don't let this opportunity become another memory." The words lingered in your soulmate's mind as they looked through old chats, lost photos, and small reminders of the connection that had never entirely vanished. No matter how much time had gone by or how many distractions emerged, your name continued to be the silent solution to every tough choice. They noticed something they had missed countless times, a pattern that now seemed impossible to ignore. Every time life became overwhelming, their thoughts always returned to you. At that point, they realized that moving on didn't mean pretending the past didn't matter, rather, it meant having the guts to confront it head-on before it was too late. Just as your soulmate found the strength to send the message they had rewritten in their hearts in 100 different ways, another unanticipated thing happened. Before they could hit send, a new notification with a familiar detail caught their attention right away. It implied that someone close to you had recently talked about them, and the words were not at all what they had feared. Instead of rejection, there was curiosity, and instead of anger, there was hope. The one truth that both hearts had been waiting to hear could be revealed in the next conversation, but what that conversation would reveal remained a mystery. Your soulmate stared at the screen, unable to believe that the story they thought had already ended might actually be opening a brand new chapter. They slowly smiled, took a steady breath, and realized that the next conversation could reveal that truth. Your soulmate didn't answer right away after seeing those words of encouragement. Instead, they put the phone down and asked themselves one challenging question: if I finally have this chance, will I tell the complete truth? The answer came almost immediately. This time, they refused to let emotion speak before honesty. Yes, the girl's questions had never been random. They had been preparing your soulmate to face what they had avoided for so long. Don't skip. The next decision wasn't just about sending a message. No more hiding behind pride. No more pretending the connection had faded. Every conversation from the night before suddenly pointed to this exact moment. A few hours later, something unexpected happened. Before your soulmate could type a single word, they received another message from the girl that contained just one sentence. It was about determining whether they were finally ready to stop running from the feelings that had silently followed them every single day. When she said, "I hope you choose honesty before life chooses silence for you," it struck a deeper chord than anything she had said the previous evening. Your soulmate smiled slightly, realizing that she had known their innermost thoughts long before they did. They opened a blank message, erased it, started over, erased it again, and nothing seemed good enough. How could years of unsaid feelings fit into a few lines? Then they recalled a simple statement you had once made, one that had stuck with them through every doubtful season, reminding them that sincerity would always be more important than perfection. Something enormous is waiting for you because, at that very moment, another unexpected piece of the puzzle silently fell into place. Your soulmate's expression changed from nervous anticipation to complete astonishment after a brief conversation in which they learned something that completely altered their perception of your side of the story. The phone rang just as your soulmate mustered the courage to hit send. The caller wasn't the girl, rather, it was someone who knew both of you. They looked at the message waiting on the screen, took a deep breath, and whispered, "Now I finally know what I have to say," realizing for the first time that your silence had never been the result of carelessness but rather had been shaped by circumstances they had never taken the time to understand. A wave of regret followed immediately by hope swept over them. However, right before their finger hit the send button, they became aware of a tiny detail that had been hidden in front of them the entire time, a detail that had the power to drastically alter the meaning of every conversation that had come before it. At first, the details seemed unimportant, but the longer your soulmate studied them, the more everything started to make sense. It was a date, a straightforward date related to one of your final conversations, and up until that point they had thought your story ended there. However, after compiling all of the questions the girl had asked, all of the unanswered questions, your soulmate slowly smiled through misty eyes, realizing how easily two people can drift apart when silence speaks louder than honesty. Stay with this story because the next decision would determine whether that silence finally came to an end. That date had not been an ending at all, rather, it had been the beginning of a misunderstanding that continued to grow because neither of you ever knew the full truth. Your soulmate erased the message they had been trying to perfect without wasting any more time. Instead of looking for perfect words, they began writing from the heart. Each sentence was straightforward and honest. There were no dramatic promises or attempts to change the past, just the truth that they ought to have told long ago. Before they hit send, they recalled the girl's last question from the previous evening. If they already knew how you truly felt, what would you be afraid of? That question eliminated the last vestige of hesitation, making regret seem more potent than fear, and for the first time in a very long time, your soulmate experienced peace rather than uncertainty. As they reached for the send button, a second notification subtly appeared beneath the message. It wasn't from the girl or the person who had called earlier, but it was connected to you in a way your soulmate never anticipated. They knew they couldn't control the outcome, but they could finally control their courage. They looked at the incomplete message one last time, whispered, "Maybe this is the moment we've both been waiting for," and made their decision after learning that you had been thinking about the same memories that had filled their hearts all night at nearly the exact same moment. Their pulse quickened as they realized this couldn't just be a coincidence. However, what transpired right after that message was sent would determine whether two hearts that had been divided for so long by miscommunication were finally going to find the truth they had both been seeking. For a split second, the world appeared to stand still. Instead of staring at the screen in anticipation of an immediate response, your soulmate put the phone next to them and exhaled slowly, knowing that they had accomplished the one thing that fear had kept them from doing for so long. Minutes went by in total silence, each second feeling heavier than the last. Then the screen lit up. Your soulmate read it once, then again, their eyes welling with emotion as they realized something they had never dared to believe: the distance between you had never been caused by a lack of feeling. It wasn't a long response, nor was it full of dramatic words. Rather, it was a simple reply that carried more meaning than pages of conversation ever could. Unanswered questions, bad timing, and two hearts defending themselves in exactly the same way had created it. Don't skip it because the ultimate truth was just starting to come to light. As the conversation went on, each message gradually eliminated another layer of miscommunication, making things that had previously appeared unclear suddenly clear.